2 weeks ago, I asked you a question. Which champions in a solo aspect have the most utility in game? And this is indeed kind of like considering things like immunities, power control, taking on different champions that evade and do the thing. And as always, thanks very much to everybody that takes part in these little kind of like survey data collection type things, because what it does, it helps create like better like top fives, and it's great to make this particular content because then you kind of like see what people are thinking. We then can like create things, and I've created a little spreadsheet which I don't know if I'll attach to this video. Might make it like a bit longer and it kind of more data added to it, because it's helpful because it has different areas of kind of going, okay, well, this can drive players understandings of what is a good rank up for taking on different types of content. But do not fret if your favorite champion is not amongst the list. Like the thing is with this is like, well, I just kind of attributed to the data, and if people get involved with these community tab posts more, then it means I can get a lot more accurate data to then kind of create like better top fives, better top tens, and structure videos as well. So please get involved with these things when they're on the community tab. But let's get down to business and go over the top 5, starting off with number 5, which is shared, funnily enough, between Omega Sentinel, Doctor Doom and Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider ticks a lot of boxes, strangely enough. A lot of us know him for the amazing crit damage he does, but he also has an ability to gain a lot of buffs very kind of easily. He has damaging debuffs, especially with Armor Break, and also damaging debuffs with Incinerators, non-damaging debuffs with Armor Break. So yes, SP1 and special attacks for those two things respectively. Buff countering as well with Fate Seal, buffed up counter because, hey, you know, he's kind of like, he's buffed up, so he's, you know, that's what you need. Also, you've got immunities in shape and form of bleed and incinerate immunity, which is very helpful, and as we all know, like huge damage, to name but a few abilities this champion possesses. Doctor Doom is number 5 as well because he generates buffs to a degree. That's with SP3 rotations, and again, you know, depending if you want a dexterity, you could find yourself being a slight buffed up cover, but it's a very very iffy one. Distract for sure, immunities to shock, and also a good amount of high damage for that particular champion. Buff countering, non-damaging debuffs, damaging debuffs. There's lots this champion does. Power control, if I didn't name it already. There's lots this champion deals with and does, and is just a fantastic champion. The final number 5 is, well, Omega Sentinel. Omega Sentinel like ticks a lot of boxes to so much of a degree that you have to slide down on the ability. It's auto block at the bottom there, but it's very rare you see champions where you're able to kind of like slide down and see like go, okay, well, there's so many abilities right here. I mean, look, heal block, armor, incinerates, a pre-fight. The champion's got immunities. There's all kind of like deals with debuffs situations, but there's tons of things that kind of like tick this champion's boxes, especially when it comes to the pre-fights and helping out. Heal block there, cowardice. We've got the tracking debuff and bypasses the effects of mist. Like, come on, like, there's so much utility right here with the Omega Sentinel. This is the champion that was promised to us that lost out to Hercules, and yeah, it's a very different type of champion that Hercules is, where it's kind of like all killer, no filler when it comes to damage, but this is kind of like, again, the kind of utility monster that we were hoping to get from the Summoner's Choice. Equal 4th now, and that's Black Widow, Clairvoyant, and Nimrod. The champion ticks a lot of boxes in being a counter to, yeah, Magneto, #metal, being kind of like, there's some stuff going on here that kind of makes you go like, damn. Especially having armor break immunity and the bleed and poison immunity. So there's immunities there, power control. Oh, energy damage instead of physical can be very helpful in certain situations as well. Especially I'm talking like a core counter. So there's a lot of things going on for this champion. A lot of kind of like positive buffs. Smacking amounts of energy damage, very good at kind of dealing a huge amount of burst shock type damage, shock kind of passive damage. So again, lots of things like ticking the boxes here for Nimrod as a champion, and especially when it comes to utility and going, okay, well, if you've got a mutant that you're going up against as well as an end boss, and this can be a pretty kind of like good kind of counter for that. So yeah, pretty sweet champ. A Black Widow Clairvoyant just missed out by 1 point in the tally system to kind of get into that number 3 spot. But Black Widow Clairvoyant was, a lot of people in the responses were kind of like all about this champ, and the same thing, like, I bring this champion a lot into content, and that's just because of this kind of like ability to take on bleed immunity or bleed situations, poison, incinerates, and as well doing things that other champions don't. Having the buff immunity is good, but also being able to suppress any kind of like or nullify buffs in certain situations can be very much beneficial. And the different types of curses when you switch into them based on the immunity, so curse of blood, curse of plague, curse of hellfire, having those immunities is a great help, but more so when you get certain things like this. So you get yourself healing off the SP2 with when you're in the curse of blood. You get the power control elements when you're in the curse of plague, so that's the poison immunity. So that power control dealing is very good, and also dealing a burst damage in the curse of hellfire. All of it has all the champion has is very helpful things between the purpose of power control, dealing with buffs, and also dealing up with those immunities at the same time, to name but a few of the kind of utility factors this champion has. But yeah, great champion. And Sanders missed out on the kind of like top 3, but it's still kind of like within the top 5, which I love. Colossus now at number 3. Now that's a weird one, but I get it. There's this point in time where I think a lot of us will look at situations and go, do I have an immunity to this? Do I have a champion that has buffs and a certain type of immunity? And that then thrusts you into a situation of, hang on a minute, Colossus is a great option for this. I mean, a good example is a side quest this month. If you don't play into the node narrative of that Terex fight in the second week of Galen goes to 2018, is it? Or 16? 2016. Then you'll know that there's a need for an Incinerate immunity, a Bleed immunity, and Cold Snap immunity. And the great thing about this champion, Colossus, is that this champion has those particular abilities, but also he's armor break immune, so that makes him an option to take on the likes of Terex. So there we go. That's always a good option right there. The champion has a load of buffs, so going up against buffed up can be another great option, but also has incredible damage, especially if you look to go parry heavy, get that fury up, and then you're able to the passive fury, and then you're able to do it like an SP2. It means that you're able to like stonk in a great amount of damage for it. So yeah, that's kind of like, again, to name but a few of this champion's abilities, but as well being quite kind of like robust and strong, and it was a great buff like Venom and so many others that have worked, and Magneto. It's a shame there's a few others old buff champions that didn't get quite so much the love that they deserve. Now coming into the business end, potentially what is going to be my next rank 4 6-star champion, and that is going to be Apocalypse. Apocalypse won out with just the one in the tally system, and it was still very interesting to see. This champion has lots of things going for it. I mean, look, offers special attacks depending on the amount of is it genetic code, genetic enhancements, genetic code, whatever, genetic code you have. You are able to get like a prowess passive in order to do a lot of damage. A very good champion to use in Cavalier difficulty on a monthly basis. But when it comes to interaction with the mutant line, that's the first thing, kind of like being able to kind of like just take down mutants. The second thing is the way the champion is able to empower other mutants and horsemen. So it kind of like gives out utility as well, which I think definitely is the reason that it's the number 2 in the list, because of what it does. But also the way that the champion has over parry heavy can do or heavy attack can do a bleed debuff, and an SP1 with a poison debuff, beating bleed immune, being an evade counter, especially with the extent of how you interact. So the more that you interact with those evading champions, you're able to build yourself up a little bit of an evade counter. This champion is great, by the way, for Grandmaster Gauntlet. Also Incinerate immunity and Disorient immunity as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff being brought to the table from Apocalypse. Again, to name but a few of the things that he is kind of capable of doing, and definitely deserves that number 2 spot in the kind of like the top utility champions, because it's not just about helping champions out, other mutants, it's all about doing damage as well. High debuff damage can be done, especially if you run Suicide Masteries with this champion. The final thing that just popped into my brain is the Awakened ability. I'm personally a big advocate, and I think I did a video on this channel about the regeneration ability that the champion has. So if you are one of these people that like to use for a couple of fights with Apocalypse, pocket him for a few more fights in future, or I think it's it's like 2 times. So it's like, yeah, the kind of like the ones that you win in the future, you bring him back in and he's able to top up his health. Like it's nice. It's not extensive. It gets better when you get to 200 signature, but then it's down to a personal preference whether or not you want to do that. He's good without his signature ability. It's just a case of like, it's up to you how you play this champion with questing, and also can save you a little bit on health potions towards the end. But yeah, a deserving number 2 spot. Which of course leads us to number 1 on the list. Now, my favourite, one of my favourites, and I'm quite fortunate to have a 6-star version and a 5-star version. There was times I like to run double of these, like some Cavalier difficulties you might see in a live stream that I'm running 2 of these, and it's just down to a personal preference again. Like if anything to happen to my first one, I'm like, no, I cannot like go with that and not using Warlock in this tech Cavalier node, and I end up kind of like using both of them for that. Will I rank for this champion at some stage? Quite possibly, but maybe when the resources become a little bit more available, and as well I'm not kind of looking towards things like prestige and stuff like that. But any case, Warlock is number 1 on the list, and it makes sense. It makes sense for what he ticks the boxes of, especially when I was creating the little kind of like spreadsheet for this. I kind of like the boxes that are ticking for these particular things of the different areas. Like there's honestly the more green than I think a lot of other champions do have on these particular sections. Especially because the champion builds buffs. A lot of time you'll find in different pieces of content, immunities are key with different situations. And this champion's got quadruple immunities, so that's kind of fantastic. And the final things are power control, which, let's face it, that's again another important thing, and as well heal block. Heal block is one of the main things, especially with the virus and how that kind of like interacts. But there's so many things to mention. Like I could say about the regeneration factor. And I like the regeneration. If I'm looking at like a bit low on health, I mean, back a long time ago, I used to kind of do that a lot, rotate around SP3s. But once you get this champion on Suicide Masteries, then this is great. This champion works with Suicide Masteries and non-Suicide Masteries. Whether or not you're having something that you've got to block health, armor break if you need to do it, if there's shock, if there's whatever, this guy seems to like throw a debuff or whatever. This champion ticks a lot of boxes. The immunities, the power control, the heal block dealing with. So many decent things, and being compatible with a mastery setup that a lot of players do have. We've currently got another community tab, little kind of data collection video going, which is this here, which is what are the best champions to get to max signature level. So get involved with that if you want. Currently we've got 55 comments on it, which means that, you know, there's probably got like 55 plus different champions to put on that list, which is going to be great, so we can create some like really kind of stonking videos. And you can check out the link in the description to the community tab, as well as the link to the one that we just discussed in this video. So go and check that out there. Thank you very much for getting involved. Hope you found this video interesting. Check out some other content which will be located on screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video, whatever that topic may be, or on a live stream very, very soon. Bye bye. Bye.